If you were denied entry into the very place you built with your own hands, would you stay silent or make the entire system bow its head? I'm sorry, sir. Our boutique currently serves clients with appointments only. This special collection is not available to walk-ins. The receptionist's voice was calm, gentle, yet sharp as a blade wrapped in velvet. Standing across from her was a man in his early 40s, wearing worn jeans, a wrinkled windbreaker, and scuffed sneakers. He didn't respond, only nodded slightly before turning and walking out of the shimmering revolving doors of Maison Alara, the luxury fashion house he himself had founded. His name was Elias Monroe, the very man who once arranged the first hangers by hand, designed the store's original display shelves, and turned Maison Alara from a small Brooklyn atelier into a fashion empire spanning the capitals of the world. And yet this morning, in the very sanctuary he had built, Elias was turned away like an uninvited stranger, simply because he no longer fit the profile of someone they served. Behind the glass, the receptionist, Camille, returned to her tablet without so much as a glance after him, her voice drifting lightly toward two new customers who had just walked in, dressed in designer bags, oversized sunglasses, and phones live-streaming their entrance. Welcome to Alara. Our new collection is reserved exclusively for Platinum tier members and above. However, I'd be happy to send you a link to register for a preview. One of the two turned their camera toward the door, chuckled as Elias walked away, and said, "Looks like this old guy thought he was at a discount outlet." That brief moment was caught on video, and within hours, the clip had begun spreading online, racking up thousands of shares and mocking comments. But Elias didn't know that as he walked into the Beverly Hills sunlight. What he felt was something warm and silent stirring in his chest, not personal hurt, but a burning question. How many other customers had been turned away just like him, simply for not dressing the part, driving the right car, or speaking in the expected tone? Maison Alara was built to celebrate individuality, to make fashion a bridge, not a barrier. But now, he had been pushed out by that very vision. Not with arguments or force, but with selective silence, the kind that cloaks itself in superiority. Elias stopped across the street, turned back to look at the store, his reflection in the tinted glass staring at the world he once created like a stranger. And in that moment, he understood. This journey was not about revenge, but about restoration. About bringing Alara back to where it truly belongs, alongside everyday people with extraordinary stories. And the truth would begin right where he had just been denied. From the 49th floor of Maison Alara's Manhattan headquarters, the morning light filtered through the clear glass walls, casting a soft golden hue across the ebony wood floor. Elias Monroe stood silently before the tablet screen, his eyes fixed on the customer walk-in chart from the Beverly Hills store. The red curve dropped sharply, a 61% decrease over the past 2 months. Everything else had gone up. Revenue, average purchase value, even the repurchase rate. But no one came to browse, to try things on, to feel the experience like before. Elias gently tapped the screen. Below the graph were hard, cold numbers that cut like knives. 17 customer complaints in 3 weeks. 12 cases of rejecting walk-in clients. 5 negative articles from independent fashion bloggers. Without saying much, he called in his assistant, Noelle, and handed her the tablet. She said nothing for the first 15 seconds, simply swiping the screen, then furrowed her brow. There's been no official announcement about switching to an appointment-only model, but every client interaction at the Beverly Hills location reads like a private members-only club. Elias asked plainly, "Who's managing the store?" "Chase Landon," Noelle replied. "Relocated from New York 6 months ago. I've tried scheduling 2 surprise audits, but both were postponed. The staff schedule always changes at the last minute." Elias turned toward the glass window. Below were towering buildings and a bustling crowd, reminding him of the first day he created the brand, with 5 handmade clothing racks, a borrowed corner in a mid-tier shopping center, and a defiant belief in possibility. A soft chime signaled a new email on the tablet. He glanced down. An anonymous message with the subject line, "You're being robbed in your own name." No sender, just an attached image of an internal customer tier chart from the Beverly Hills store. Platinum, immediate service. Gold, wait 15 minutes. Standard, deny access, suggest online registration. Elias no longer had doubts. What was happening at the flagship store wasn't an oversight. It was an intentional policy. And it wasn't just tarnishing the brand, it was distorting the very soul of Alara. He raised his head, his voice calm yet resolute. Cancel all meetings tomorrow. Noel froze. Even the one with the Japanese investors? Elias nodded. Them too. And prepare an outfit for me. One that doesn't look like a CEO. I want to walk into that store as someone no one cares about, to see whether Alara today still recognizes people like me back then. At 9:58 the next morning, Elias Monroe sat quietly in the back seat of a rented SUV, his eyes following the bustling crowd along Rodeo Drive. He wore no suit, no Swiss watch, and bore no visible signs of power. Just a man in a silver-gray windbreaker, slightly faded jeans, worn sneakers with soles thinning, and over his shoulder hung a canvas tote bag with a faint Alara logo, a limited run from the brand's very first year, back when no one yet knew the name. He stepped out of the car and melted into the city's rhythm like a passerby, anonymous and uninvited. The Maison Alara store rose before him like a cathedral of fashion, with towering glass panels, gleaming marble floors, and a minimalist interior designed to perfection. But the first thing Elias noticed was not the merchandise. It was the barrier between the door and the guest, a black velvet rope. Just behind it stood a grand reception desk, and behind it, a woman with platinum hair tied high, a face void of expression, and eyes that almost never made direct contact. A small nameplate on her chest read, Camille Lemaire, Senior Guest Experience. Elias had never heard of such a title before. She didn't look up when he approached. After a few seconds of silence, her voice rang out like a scripted line from a program. Hello, do you have an appointment? Elias smiled, his voice deep and calm. No, I'm just passing through from out of state. I heard this is the flagship and wanted to stop by. I've followed Maison Alara since the very first collections. Camille raised her eyebrows slightly, then quickly cast her eyes downward. I'm sorry, but we currently operate on a personalized experience model. Customers must book an appointment in advance to be served. She gestured toward a QR code framed in glass, as if offering a silent invitation to leave. Elias remained patient. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to see the new scarf collection, thinking of picking up a gift for my niece. Camille's tone didn't change. We only serve clients with platinum status or higher. The policy is very clear. No exceptions. Behind her, Elias saw at least 5 stylists chatting near a display counter. No guests were in the fitting area. No one looked busy. No consultations were in progress. Then, just as he was about to quietly step away, Camille tilted her head, her gaze flicking to his worn shoes before uttering a line almost in a whisper, yet just loud enough for him to hear. Maison Alara is not a discount department store. Elias froze. For a fleeting second, everything stood still, but he didn't respond. He simply stared into the cold light reflecting off the stone wall behind her, then turned and walked away. No anger, no bitterness. But inside his chest, something had begun to stir. And this time, it wasn't suspicion. It was fire. A charcoal gray SUV pulled up in front of a modest concrete building nearly 3 miles from the heart of Beverly Hills, an old satellite office once used by Alara for top-secret projects. Elias entered without showing any ID. The fingerprint recognition system had already identified him. Inside, a soft light bathed the quiet, hum-filled servers like a military command center at peace. Waiting at the entrance was Dante Rivas, head of high-level security, a former counterintelligence officer, tall and composed, whose every movement was precise and whose eyes cut straight to the truth. "How was the shopping trip?" Dante asked, his tone casual like coffee shop banter. Elias replied simply, "Enlightening." Without another word, they stepped into the control room. Behind one-way glass, the entire surveillance system of the Beverly Hills boutique was being streamed in real time. At a row of monitors sat a young woman with cropped hair, wireless headset, and eyes locked on the keyboard. Lyra Kim, a specialized IT expert covertly embedded in the store's tech support team 3 weeks prior. "Good morning, sir," she said without looking up. "We found what you were looking for." She tapped a key and a cascade of files appeared. The entire appointment-only policy was implemented solely by Chase Landon. No official documentation, no approval through any management process. The internal CRM was modified to include a visual evaluation field, 3 tiers, platinum, gold, and standard. Elias narrowed his eyes. Based on what criteria? Lyra typed a command, and internal data strings filled the screen. Not purchase history. It's based on physical appearance, social media profiles, vehicle brand, watch brand, even residential zip code. And most of these classifications were assigned by Camille Lemaire. Another tap. Images of tagging lines appeared. Platinum, Gucci, Bentley, Rolex, 10K plus followers. Standard, plain clothes, no purchase history, Japanese cars. Elias stared at a heat map. Standard guests were denied nearly across the board, while over 70% of platinum guests were served even without an appointment. "Why are sales still up?" Elias asked. Lyra switched to a new screen. Chase raised prices for platinum guests under something called Elara Black Label, up to 30% above listed prices. They believe it's an exclusive privilege, but it's fabricated value. Elias stayed silent. This had crossed the threshold of ethics. This was no longer a mistake or a misguided culture. This was a system engineered to distort truth, built on class discrimination, profiting from the illusion of privilege. Lyra glanced over her shoulder at him. "One more thing. I've activated a cloud backup protocol. From now on, every transaction at that boutique will be mirrored here in real time. Nothing can be deleted without us knowing." Elias nodded, exhaling slowly as if unsheathing a sword. "Good. Send everything to legal and notify the press. But first, I want to see them, face to face. No more glass between us." The door to the surveillance room opened once more, this time to welcome David Tran, a young finance staff member whom Elias had embedded into the Beverly Hills boutique's accounting system under the guise of an intern. With tousled hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and a polite demeanor, he was easy to overlook. But within just a few exchanges, Elias realized David was the missing link needed to complete the picture. David opened his laptop and displayed a dual spreadsheet. On one side, the revenue report sent to headquarters, and on the other, the anonymized internal ledger. Same day, same transaction, but the recorded value differs by as much as 40%. The reason? These black label orders are created exclusively for platinum clients. But in the official system, they're either erased or swapped out with cheaper products. That discrepancy, David paused and changed the slide, gets routed to a shell company called ArcLight Partners LLC, owned by someone named Chase Landon. Elias clenched his fist, his knuckles turning white. "They're not just discriminating, they're stealing." Lyra interjected, "And it doesn't stop there." She played a video clip pulled from the boutique's security footage. The screen displayed Camille handing a business card to a middle-aged woman dressed in a plain blouse and slightly dusty shoes. The woman shook her head in disappointment and walked out, but not home. A neighboring boutique's camera 2 blocks away captured her entering with that same card, where she was welcomed like royalty. David added, "We checked. 3 nearby boutiques have a covert agreement with Chase. Anytime Elara rejects a guest labeled as standard, Camille redirects them with that card. If they make a purchase elsewhere, Chase receives a commission, averaging $500 per person." Elias said nothing, but his gaze lingered on the next screen, showing the man named Theo Cruz, whom Elias had seen entering the boutique the previous day, greeted with Camille's beaming smile and a warm handshake from Chase. Lyra revealed more. His real name is Jason Miller. He's a freelance actor and part-time model. He's never purchased a single item. Yet every Friday he shows up at the boutique, receives an empty shopping bag, poses in the fitting room, and posts on Instagram with hashtags like #LaraBlack and #style above all. David pressed a button. A recording played from inside the boutique. "Hold the bag higher, make it look like you just bought something." Same bag, but no one notices, as long as the picture's pretty. Another voice laughed. Customers will swarm like moths to a flame. Elias gave a slight nod, his lips tightening into a cold line. Fabricated scarcity, selling the illusion of privilege, profiting from both ends. This isn't a mistake in operations, this is manipulation. And it's happening in Alara's name. He looked slowly at the team before him, the ones who had quietly observed, documented, and were now ready to expose everything. Prepare everything. At exactly 2 o'clock this afternoon, I'm returning to that store, not as a customer, but as the founder. He stood, his voice low, each word cutting like a blade across glass. And this time, they'll have to look me in the eye and answer. At exactly 2 p.m., a fleet of black vehicles bearing the Alara Executive Fleet emblem pulled up in front of the flagship store in Beverly Hills. 4 SUVs braked in unison, drawing astonished glances from pedestrians along Rodeo Drive. The front door opened, and Elias Monroe stepped out, dressed in a charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection, a navy blue tie held by a silver clip engraved with the Alara emblem. His polished Italian shoes tapped softly on the marble steps, reflecting the afternoon sun like a sword that did not need to be drawn to make others step back. But nothing was sharper than the look in his eyes. Calm, resolute, and utterly unreadable. Beside him stood Dante Rivas, with a visible security badge, Patricia Moen, head of legal affairs, holding a black file in hand, Marcus Lamb, regional director from headquarters, and finally Ava G., an investigative journalist from the City Journal, her camera ready to capture every moment. Inside the boutique, Camille was tapping on her tablet as usual. She did not look up until a strange silence swept across the space, a hush that felt like the entire room holding its breath. She raised her eyes and they met Elias's. That glance made her finger slip from the screen. "Mr. Monroe?" she stammered. Elias smiled politely. "I believe I have an appointment today." Behind him, Marcus and Patricia stepped forward, their gazes cutting through the space like blades. Ava had already started snapping photos. A man claiming to be Langford the day before, actually Jason Miller, stood by the fitting area. Chase Landon emerged from the lounge, still holding his espresso. He chuckled upon seeing the group, but the laugh shattered into discomfort the moment Elias's eyes met his. "Mr. Monroe, what an unexpected honor," Chase said, swallowing hard. Elias took a step forward. "No appointment necessary, I hope?" Chase offered a weak, awkward smile. Jason Miller began inching toward the back exit, but Dante raised his hand. "Stay. You're part of this too." Stylists, baristas, and even customers trying on shoes all stopped. Every eye focused on the center of the boutique. Elias glanced around, then spoke in a voice just loud enough, each word dropping like a stone into still water. "I am Elias Monroe, founder of Maison Alara. This morning, I returned to the very place I built from the first sketch, the first clothing rack, and I was turned away. Not because I didn't want to buy something, but because I wasn't dressed the part." A long pause. Then he looked directly at Chase. "You created a shadow model. A system that decided who gets to walk in and who is shown the door. You introduced unauthorized customer tiers, inflated prices, made covert deals with competitors, and hired fake VIPs to mislead the public." Patricia stepped forward, opening the file. "We have full evidence, shell accounts, double ledgers, internal emails, and transcripts of customer insults." A young stylist adjusted his glasses and raised a hand timidly. "I'm Quinn Liu. I tried to report this multiple times but was warned I was interfering with operational strategy." Another employee, Nora Delgado, spoke up. "I was once suspended for letting an elderly woman try on a scarf without an appointment." Camille said, "If a guest can't set their own value, they shouldn't be valued by Alara." Elias nodded, his expression softening slightly as those with integrity stepped forward. Then he turned back to Chase and Camille, his voice dropping but laced with steel. "You are both officially terminated. Effective immediately." The boutique went dead silent. Dante gave a signal. 2 security personnel entered through the front doors, prepared. Chase shouted. "You can't do this. I turned this place into a beacon of profit." Elias did not turn around. Not a beacon, an ivory tower, and now it will fall. He stepped into the center of the boutique and for the first time in many months looked at the space with the eyes of the man who once dreamed it into existence. Elara was never meant to decide who is worthy. It was created to show people they already are. As two security officers escorted Chase and Camille out of the store under the stunned gaze of both customers and staff, Elias remained at the reception counter, the same spot where he had been turned away just a day before. No one spoke in their defense. Even the customers who had once enjoyed special privileges quietly looked away, as if no one wished to be associated with the names that had just fallen from their gilded thrones. Elias walked slowly toward Chase's former office, a room that once reeked of expensive cologne, decorated with silver sculptures and Italian leather chairs, now stood empty. The nameplate was gone, the personalized badge removed. It was just a quiet, well-lit space, ready to begin again. He turned to Marcus. "Call that young stylist, Quinn Liu. I'd like to meet him." A few minutes later, Quinn entered, visibly nervous, hands clasped together, eyes more often fixed on the floor than on the person across from him. Elias invited him to sit, too. "You were the first to speak up before anyone else dared to. That's not easy, and it's not common." Quinn shook his head slightly. "I didn't think anyone would believe me. I just couldn't stand by and watch customers be treated that way. My parents are immigrants. I know what it feels like to be judged by the clothes you wear." Elias nodded. "We need people like you to rebuild what has been distorted." He opened a drawer and pulled out a short document. "I'd like you to take the role of Director of Customer Experience for this very boutique." Quinn's eyes widened. "I'm just a stylist. I've never managed, never led a team." Marcus interjected. "But you have integrity, the skills we can teach." Just then, a soft knock came at the door. Another staff member stepped in. It was Nora Delgado, the one Camille had suspended for letting an elderly woman try on a scarf. Elias nodded to her. "I'd also like you to take on the role of floor manager, not because of a performance report, but because you upheld the spirit of Elara even when the environment around you lost its essence." Nora stood still for a moment, then softly replied, "To be honest, I was planning to submit my resignation next week. But today, I think maybe I'll stay." Elias smiled, "And I think our customers will be grateful for that." The three of them sat down to discuss how to restructure the boutique, from the welcoming process and necessary role adjustments to resetting the store's layout to reflect the original open design. No more velvet ropes, no more isolated VIP lounges, but also no more performative nods. As the conversation grew more energized, Elias's phone buzzed. He glanced down. A message from Noel. "The article is live, trending on social now." Elias rose and stepped into the quiet hallway, opening the feature from the City Journal. The headline appeared in bold. "Disguised CEO exposes elitism in fashion. Maison Elara confronts its own reflection." Below the article were thousands of comments. "First time seeing a CEO speak through action, not slogans. Visiting Elara for the first time this week. This is how a brand earns back trust." But what left Elias silent were not the praises. It was the emails forwarded to his personal inbox, from customers who had once been turned away, now returning. They shared stories of painful experiences, but also offered gratitude for being heard, for being acknowledged, and for being invited back. Elara was changing, not through numbers, but through the very people it had once forgotten. The next morning, before opening hours, Elias Monroe arrived at the Beverly Hills boutique. No one knew, but he had spent the entire night with the technical, interior, and HR teams resetting everything. Every light, every sign, every detail of the customer experience. The velvet ropes were gone. The reception desk labeled Premium Experience had been removed. There was no longer a designated area for Platinum members. In its place hung a new sign above the entrance, simple yet striking in the morning light. "Welcome to Elara. No appointment necessary." The coffee bar remained, but now the smooth espresso was offered just as freely to a first-time visitor as to a 10-year loyal client. The black Elara Black cards had vanished from all displays. Replacing them were minimalistic white cards, uniform for everyone, no tier codes, no implied privileges. Elias walked slowly through the showroom. Without needing anyone to guide him, he adjusted the collar of a mannequin, straightened the hem of a coat, and repositioned a handbag that had tilted off center. Not out of perfectionism, but out of connection. This was the space he had once created, not to separate, but to invite. And now it had returned to its true form. Across the room, Quinn Liu was checking the internal registration system, while Nora Delgado chatted with a new hire, a young woman fresh out of college, just starting in customer support. Elias smiled softly. Those who were once sidelined were now leading the new team, not with authority, but with care. At exactly 10 a.m., the boutique doors opened. The first to walk in was an elderly couple, the gentleman in a worn wool coat, holding a cloth cap, and the lady carrying a bag with a sticker of their granddaughter. They walked slowly, their eyes filled with hesitation. But Quinn stepped forward without pause. "Welcome to Elara," he said with a sincere smile. "Can I help you find something?" The old man replied, still a bit shy, "Our granddaughter just graduated college. We wanted to get her something, to make her feel truly grown up." Quinn nodded. "Then you've come to the right place." He gently guided them toward the new collection, chatting and showing them around, never in a rush. Elias stood in the corner, eyes following the three of them. And in that moment, he realized what he had lost over the past few months was not control of the brand, but the feeling of seeing someone step into Elara and truly feel welcomed. By noon, the boutique began to fill, not loud, not chaotic, just warmly bustling. Staff walked out to greet instead of waiting behind counters. They conversed instead of observed. And no one asked, "What tier are you?" or "Do you have a booking code?" They simply said, "How can I help you today?" In a small room at the back, Elias, Marcus, and Patricia monitored the live feedback board, where every customer could leave comments unfiltered after their visit. Messages poured in. "I don't know why, but today Elara made me feel respected. First time I tried on a dress without worrying I wasn't the type. I'm not a regular, but today I was treated like a real guest." Elias quietly placed his hand on the table. This wasn't a victory. This was a rebirth. And it didn't come from strategy, but from choosing the right people, the very ones once deemed not enough. They were the true soul of Elara, and from here, everything was only just beginning. That evening, as Beverly Hills softened under the streetlights and other luxury boutiques began to lower their shades, Maison Elara remained lit. Not because customers hadn't left, but because no one on the team wanted to go home too soon. They were living in a moment everyone could feel, something deeper than sales, beyond brand image. Trust was returning. In a small office behind the showroom, Elias Monroe held a video conference with regional directors, training leads, and store managers from New York to Tokyo. On screen were dozens of faces, old and young, men and women, people who had once only received directives from the boardroom, now listening not to a policy, but to a reckoning. Elias stood in the center of the room without a written speech. He spoke slowly. "Yesterday we looked in the mirror and saw someone we didn't recognize, but today we start choosing again, choosing to become the version that matches the reason this brand was born in the first place." He clicked a remote, and the screen shifted to a simple slide, the Elara Welcome Standard. Below the title were three core values: transparency, inclusion, respect. Elias looked around, his gaze pausing on each frame. Starting next week, every Elara boutique will implement this new standard of welcome. No more hidden classifications, no more coded tiers, privilege cards, or point systems based on personal judgment. Everyone who walks through our doors will be treated as worthy because they are customers, and dignity never needs justification. Scattered applause began, then spread across the screen, not out of obligation, but relief. Marcus Lamb, regional director, said quietly, "This should have happened long ago." Elias nodded, but better late than never. When the meeting ended, he stepped back into the showroom. The lights had softened, but the atmosphere remained warm. Quinn Liu was helping a teenage boy button his shirt, preparing for his first job interview. Nora Delgado was assisting a single mother in choosing a suit for an upcoming presentation. At the coffee counter, a high school girl trying Alara's signature latte for the first time smiled at the feeling of being grown up. Elias didn't interfere. He simply observed. Then he unlocked his phone and checked the feedback board. A new message had just come in. I was once turned away from this store because my shirt wasn't elegant enough. Today I returned, wearing the same shirt, and I was welcomed like an old friend. Elias smiled. Nothing more needed to be said. The next afternoon he left the boutique as the sun cast golden light over the street. Outside stood an elderly couple holding a small bouquet. Elias recognized them. They had come to buy a gift for their granddaughter. The man reached out to shake his hand, speaking gently. "Thank you. Not for the scarf, but for the feeling. She said she's never been treated like a true lady before." Elias returned the handshake, his voice warm and low. "I didn't give her that. It was those once overlooked, who've preserved what really matters." After they walked away, Elias slowly crossed the lobby and gathered the staff. Not to give out rewards, not to issue orders, but to share one final thought. "I want you to remember this," he said. "Luxury isn't about price. It's in the glance that carries no judgment, the greeting that comes without condition, the kindness that asks no rank." He looked around the room, letting his final words land softly but deeply. Next time someone walks through that door, treat them as if they own this place. Because one day they just might change this brand, just like you already have. And then he turned and left the boutique, not through any private exit, not with an escort. Just a man walking a path he once built, knowing with certainty this time it was leading in the right direction. When a brand forgets why it was created in the first place, what it needs is not another marketing campaign, but a touch to its conscience. True luxury does not come from a label, but from the way we treat one another. If today's story gave you something to reflect on, make sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss the journeys that bring real values back to life. And don't forget to leave a comment below with the words "I have seen" if you've ever witnessed subtle discrimination in your everyday life.